Hey guys, I just wanted to make a quick point that I forgot to put in the video. I don't know shit about content. I'm not doing this to be a YouTuber. I just do it because, I play the game sometimes and that's the way I feel. That one way that I wanted to articulate, which I didn't say it in the video and I wanted to add really quick in the front, is that the main point that I'm trying to stress is that dodging bullets in CSGO has far surpassed the idea of being accurate. That it is by far a better strategy in CSGO to make yourself hard to hit and have no regard for how accurate you are yourself, just to make sure that you're not easy to be hit. And it's very clear to see that if that strategy ends up being the main strategy, that nobody in CSGO is confident that they can consistently do anything. Because if you felt like you could pop out and consistently kill people within 1 to 5 bullets, you would not need to move around so much. But there's a reason why these god aimers like Neo and Forrest and, all these other people that you guys are considering god aimers, there's a reason why they're moving so much in every single duel, because they're not confident. A very funny example is that you see all the time by the best players that even if they're right here and a guy runs around the corner and the guy's not even looking at them, or I guess it's a bad spot because you get caught, so let me go somewhere where you don't actually get caught. So let's say I'm here, and the guy runs around the corner. A good player even will already start to move back and forth, even before the guy turns around. Because even standing still, aiming at a guy who's not even looking at them, the top pros don't feel confident that they're going to get that kill that 70, 80, 90% of the time that it makes sense for them to just stand still and get the kill a high percentage of the time. So instead, they make sure that if a guy flicks around and he's flicking at a guy that's standing still, he will get that kill a very large percentage of the time. So they don't want to give the chance of that guy being able to get them, so they just start moving. And to make a point, the players that I've seen this happen to multiple times include JW, Forrest, Happy, Get Right. They all do it. And these are players that the entire community agrees together are amazing players, no doubt. And they all do that. And I think that clearly shows a sign that people are just not confident in the mechanics of this game. So the mechanic has become dodge bullets. And eventually you will get a headshot, hopefully. And one thing to consider as well, that if you're talking about aim in 1.6, where you have to really pinpoint your aim on the guy's head, while you guys are doing couple shots, now you're talking about people that are moving so much that you might be moving to the left while he's moving to the right, but then he turns back to the left and just ends up in your crosshair. And that's how a lot of those duels end up becoming, is a person just happens to get in your crosshair. It's not that you actually used good aim. And I see it happening to myself all the time. Your aim, I still think that I'm a much better aimer than the average person, but there are definitely times where I can tell that the guy walked into my crosshair more so than I actually killed him with aim. So I just wanted to add that in the middle, and here's the start of the video. Alright guys, CSGO for Dummies here. My pistol video that I'm going to link above, a lot of you have probably never seen, has been, it's tweeted a couple times by a couple pros, and actually a large amount of posts have kind of revolved or mentioned my video, surprisingly, on Reddit. When I posted it myself, it did get a 90% upvote or 89 or something like that, but I still didn't really expect people to share it or anything like that, so I'm kind of surprised. But another guy did it today, and there's a lot of people disagreeing with it right away in the comments. And the way that they were disagreeing with it kind of gave me a new way to articulate some point, because the main argument that everyone is making, it seems like, is that shooting at moving targets and people, going like this is higher skill than, aiming at people that are going like this. And yes, I agree that it's harder. And then the next point is that dodging is a skill. And I'm going to address the two main points, that dodging is a skill and that there's more skill in these types of crazy duels. So the first thing that I want to address is the dodging being a skill. I disagree that dodging is a skill in CSGO. It was a skill in 1.6, it was a skill in Source, but very much not a skill in CSGO. Why is that? Because you can hit any random amount of bullets. I'm just spamming all my 4 movement keys in every which direction, totally random directions, and you're still accurate enough that you're going to mow someone down or even hit them in the head. So it doesn't take a lot to teach someone who's played any sort of shooter to just go like this and spam their bullets. You can learn that in under 50 hours if you came from any sort of other FPS shooter and you weren't absolutely terrible at that shooter. So there's not much skill in that. A large reason that there's not a lot of skill in that is number one, is what I just said, very easy to learn, and also what I call the grace period in CSGO is so large that you stop and become accurate and move again with no real regard for mastery. There's no mastering it. Anyone can do it. You just move as much as you want, and like anytime you touch another direction, it just like instantly becomes a perfect counter strafe, and your bullet becomes accurate again. And in 1.6, it definitely wasn't like that. You actually had a time when you shot with when you counter strafe, and it actually took skill and mastery. And then when there's a high pressure situation and there's a guy shooting at you, and you have to time everything correctly, there is a mastery that. There is a high skill level. But when anyone with very little hours or very little skill can just anytime hit any sort of back direction or another direction, and it instantly becomes a perfect counter strafe no matter how bad you actually are at timing it, I mean, that's just ridiculous. And I don't understand how anyone can argue with that. There is just literally no way to make a mistake in counter strafing. It's just impossible. You can just 80-80 to your heart's content, and half of your bullets become perfect counter strafes without any regard to timing whatsoever, and without thousands of hours of timing, or even hundreds of hours for that regard. So that's one thing. Now, another thing about the dodging being a skill is that if you guys have played 1.6 excessively, there was a lot more tagging in 1.6. So dodging wasn't nearly as much of something that you would want to do, because if your strategy was to run around a corner and then duck and turn to the left and then duck and turn to the right, if that guy hit you on your first one or before you even got to do your first silly movement, you get pinned there, and then anyone with good aim is basically just gonna, you know, he's gonna tag you there and then aim at your head and just hit you in the head. And basically you didn't really have the chance to be this huge dodging, moving player in that many duels. Maybe you would every once in a while, and your skill and your experience would teach you when to use it and when not to use it. Another point to consider is not only was there a lot of tagging, the bullet spread and the spammability while standing still with all of these weapons was very, very, very accurate. So if you had a USP in 1.6 and you were holding here and you hit the guy with the first bullet, he would get tagged. But you could actually shoot this fast while standing still accurately in 1.6. So even if the guy jumped and you tagged in the air, as soon as he landed, he would just be pinned there and he wouldn't really be able to move. So then you would tag him again, and you would just tag him over and over and over until he was dead, while he's sitting there trying to move, not being as accurate as you. And that was why the run and gun didn't really make that much sense in 1.6. There were times where you would shoulder peek and you would play games, and there were times at long distance where, you know, you'd take a shot and move and take a shot and move. But overall, the dominant playstyle was first bullet accuracy. If you had better reactions, better aim, and better spray control, you would win a very large percentage of your duels versus anybody that was even slightly worse than you. And that's a big point to consider. And then CSGO, you can kill people that are much more skilled than you way more often than you could in 1.6 or Source. In 1.6 or Source, if somebody was much better than you, because the predominant playstyle wasn't run and gun and dodge bullets, it was who can hit their shot more often, more effectively, and quicker, that if someone was just 10% better than you, he would kill you way more than 50% of the time. Whereas in CSGO, if you're 50% better than someone, if Shocks or Forrest is playing a pistol duel versus some random DMG, and that DMG is the type of guy who likes to move around and spam a lot, I guarantee you Forrest won't win that duel more than 60% of the time. Now let's get to the next point. That shooting at these moving targets is more skillful than the other style. I disagree. I explained part of it just now, so I won't repeat myself. But the second point is that just watch any top pro streamer play Face-It Pugs or Matchmaking or ESEA Pugs, and just watch them on pistol rounds versus these other good players, or like, you know, decent players. I'm not talking about like the 7 RWS bots who they just like instantly, you know, just kill them very easily because they're not very good. But watch them play versus like the random 11 RWS player, or the random Supreme Master First Class, or I don't know what the ranking system is on FACEIT, I don't play FACEIT. But like an average good player. And I guarantee you that these very good all-star players, whether it's Olaf or Shocks or Forrest doesn't stream, but Tarek or Steel or Hiko, they get wrecked at least 40% of the time on pistol rounds, if not more. And the reason for that is that there's not a single human being that we've met on this planet who has the aim to aim at these crazy mechanics. There's nobody who can do that more than 55-60% of the time. I don't care what you guys say. I've witnessed it. I watched tons of pro videos. Matches. There is nobody in the world who can hit those shots in those type of duels. I'm not saying that Shocks can't come out and one-tap someone who's just running. I'm not saying Kiyoshima can't do that. I'm not saying Forrest can't do that. But when you're talking about a guy who comes out, or let's say MBK, who jumps out, and then as soon as he lands, he's instantly into a crouch spam, there is not a single player who can win that duel more than 55% of the time versus MBK. Doesn't matter how good their aim is, because he is basically neutralizing any skill that they have, because it doesn't matter. The mechanics will not allow for you to use high skill in that. If you actually sit here and you're Olaf, and you try and actually track him and shoot him in the head, you will lose that duel. Not only will you lose it more than 50% of the time, you'll lose that probably 80% of the time. So even though you are more skilled than MBK as Olaf Meister, you can't even use your skill, because he's basically just used the mechanics to completely negate any extra skill that you have on him. And I think that that is just silly. And that's one thing about those duels. The next thing about those duels is that we all know that the CSGO source engine cannot handle these movements accurately. We know it with jump scouting. We know it with ADADing. We know it with crowd spamming. We can see that the hitboxes do not follow these patterns correctly. So why are you guys all saying that it takes more skill? Because not only can nobody aim good enough to win those duels 70, 80, 90% of the time, but on top of that, it just kind of becomes random, because even if you are aimed better than the other person, the hitboxes aren't even correctly aligned, and the registry in this game isn't very good. And the more you move, the more that the registry becomes bad. So it just becomes this like clusterfuck of just who is getting lucky.